Hello, Margaret. Okay, that's the thing though. He never actually says hello, Clarice. That's the thing. Everybody says he says hello, Clarice. No, he never says it. He says good evening, Clarice in the movie. But no. No, it's one of those oft-quoted screw-ups, you know. Just people don't know what they're saying, you know. It's hilarious. It's hilarious that constantly that people think that's the quote, but no, it isn't. Not one lick, you know. Anyway, enough about number 13, however far back it was. What number was it? Hang on. Now I gotta know. Enough of number 13. Nailed it. Let's talk about number 488. Hello there, CriterioNate here, number 488. James Ivory's adaptation of E.M. Forster's Howard's End. 1992, 142 minutes, color surround, 2.351 aspect ratio, blah, blah, blah. So as I mentioned before, it's an adaptation of a book by E.M. Forster, done by the Merchant Ivory Company. And because of that, obviously, it's out of print. So if you're looking for this, it's probably... I'm actually curious. Actually, I've got Amazon up right now. I'm curious. I'm curious as how much the Criterion 1 edition is worth. At my library, we have a copy of it. Funny enough, we have it at the whatchamacallit. What is it? On our shelves, but it's from a different publisher. I don't remember the name of it, but it's just a neat to see, you know, what other people are doing, you know, except for us, you know, outside of us, you know, intelligent people who are obviously too smart for that kind of stuff. Hey, let's get. No, I don't want to see the new. Apparently, there's a new version of Howard's End that came out last year, starring the chick from Agent Carter, and yeah. So I'm curious now how much. But anyway, not a bad movie. I wasn't crazy about this one because it's just one of those storylines that it's kind of like it's okay, but at the same time it's one of those like historical fictions that if you're in historical fiction, there you go. For me, it seems like they're all kind of confusing and also they all kind of feel the same, and they all kind of appeal to an old way of life that didn't, you know, it's especially a lot of these, like, you know, Howard's End. You know, I've watched a lot of BBC miniseries like Jane Austen, Emma, and I've seen one called The Buccaneers, and Wives and Neighbors, and Wives and Daughters, and I just kind of sat there thinking, like, what just happened? You know, not really understanding most of the plot, and I know a lot of that is because of the books that came out back then. So anyway, the Blu-ray is $90. There's one copy available for $90 on a new copy that you can get from Prime. Also a $50 copy of the DVD. So there you go. If you really want this, do it. But I wouldn't. I'm not picking up this one. But let's talk about it. So let me see if I can try to give you the plot in less than 10 minutes, which won't happen. So we've got these two families. There's the Schlegels, or the Schmiegels, or the Spiegels, or the Sweegels. What are they called? The Schlegels. The Schlegels. Margaret and Helen, and the Wilcoxes. There's Henry, who's the patriarch. Ruth, who I think is his sister or his wife or something. I'm not confused here, and I never did figure out who Ruth was, and I guess, yeah, I think Ruth was his wife or something. Ruth and their son Paul, there's their daughter Evie and Dolly, and so Helen, played by Helen Bonham Carter, gets engaged to Paul, and played by Joseph Bennett, and the two of them get engaged, And they end up breaking off, but not before she ends up writing a letter to her sister Margaret, played by Emma Thompson, and telling them, "Oh, hey, I'm going to get married to this guy," and it kind of throws them in a fit, and they end up getting the Wilcoxes end up, I guess, moving next door to them or something, and yeah, and so there's all this stress about that, but I guess they met earlier at a party or something, and she ends up having a moment with Ruth Wilcox. Margaret does. And Margaret and Ruth end up becoming friends, and Ruth introduces Margaret to Howard's End, which is their family home or something like that. And Ruth ends up becoming sick and dying, but not before leaving Howard's End to Margaret, just like writing it on a piece of pencil paper and like kind of like a makeshift will, Henry finds out about the will and basically destroys it because it doesn't look official, and he wanted to leave it to his children. He wanted to leave it, he wanted Evie or Charles or Paul, or Dolly to have it. Well, Paul, you barely see Paul throughout the movie, but Charles is the other son I mentioned, played by James Wilby. And yeah, so they kind of fight over it, and so, however, Henry ends up becoming relatively attracted to Margaret, and so he ends up proposing to her so that she can have Howard's End or share Howard's End with him, and so she accepts, and they get married and all that. Helen is kind of really skeptical about the Wilcoxes and all that, especially after like sometime after the movie. Well, after the first bit, we jump to about a year later. Helen meets a man named Leonard Bast at a music lecture, and she ends up stealing his umbrella, and he ends up finding where she lives, and so Margaret and Helen bring him in out of the rain, and they give him back her umbrella, and he goes back to his wife, Jackie. I think her name was Jackie. And so the two of them end up, and so she ends up finding Margaret's card as a bookmark, and she ends up getting really jealous and all that. What is her name? What is her name? Jackie, yeah. Okay, just making sure. Leonard and Jackie. So the two of them, so Leonard ends up becoming friends with the Schlegels, and later on, Leonard needs advice as to what to do with his job, and so Margaret asks Henry, and Henry tells Margaret that Leonard's job is going under, so he should quit and find himself a new job. He gives him a lead and all that. However, it turns out that Henry lied, and the business ended up doing well, and the job he ends up getting fired him within like a few days of him getting it, shortly after he gets the job. They're doing layoffs, and the last to come were the first to go. And so he's struggling. So he struggles to find a job when Helen finds him again, and Helen is incensed by Henry, basically, throwing Leonard out on the street with Jackie and all that. So Margaret feels bad, or Helen feels bad, so invites. Evie ends up getting married, and so Helen invites the two of them to the wedding. Margaret's a little flustered by this, but Helen, but at the same time feels bad for what Henry did and all that. And so they end up getting invited. Jackie ends up getting drunk and ends up outing Henry as her former lover. Margaret's upset by this and is upset by this and blah, blah, blah. And so Leonard and Helen get closer and end up having sex, and later on it's revealed that she's pregnant with Leonard's baby. And so the two of them, so Helen ends up kind of getting away from the family and writing letters and all that. However, their Aunt Julie, played by Brunella Scales, falls ill, and she tries to come back, and when she finds out she's going to be better, she ends up leaving and ignoring them. And so Margaret ends up tricking Helen to coming back by putting all her possessions into Howard's End because she thinks that Helen's kind of lost it, you know. Helen's upset by her leaving, by her doing all this, and yeah, and so she ends up getting upset, and so she wants, so Margaret wants Henry to let Helen stay at Howard's End for the night, because Helen just wants to go. She's planning on moving to Germany to raise her baby alone. Margaret wants her to stay one night. Henry refuses, and they fight, and they separate for a moment. Meanwhile, Leonard comes back to visit them, and when he comes there, he comes to visit them, and he finds Henry and she finds Margaret and Helen along with Charles. Charles ends up finding out that Leonard is the father of Helen's baby, and so Charles, having a short temper, ends up knocking him out, and he ends up having a heart attack and dying. Charles is arrested with manslaughter, and Margaret leaves Henry to go with Helen to raise her baby in Germany. A year later, I guess everybody's back together. Henry is revealing his will, and he says that he's leaving Howard's End to Margaret. I guess Margaret and he are back together. They reconciled. Helen's with them with the baby, and then after she dies, Helen's nephew, or Margaret's nephew, Helen's son, will receive Howard's End. And so at the end of the movie, the last bit is basically Henry revealing to Margaret that that Ruth had left her Howard's End. And I guess, that's it. Kind of a really abrupt ending, I gotta say. So, anyway, well, okay, maybe 8 minutes. It took me about 8 to 9 minutes to reveal that. So anyway, a crazy storyline, but not a bad one. I give the storyline credit. It's a good story. I'm not crazy about the acting. First of all, Anthony Hopkins. I have no problem with Anthony Hopkins, but I feel like it was so soon after The Silence of the Lambs that, The Silence of the Lambs kind of broke him. I think a lot of people recognize him as Hannibal Lecter. So to see him a year later in a historical drama, kind of a little weird. But my main concern with the actress is, first of all, I've never been a huge Emma Thompson fan. I think she's a very boring actress. She's an ugly crier, and I think just her acting is very really always been really proper and very just kind of happy-go-lucky. So I've just never been a fan of anything she's been in. Also, Helena Bonham Carter, who I've never liked, especially after Tim Burton turned her into the eternal goth chick, because after they got married, she was in every movie he ever did, so there was that, and she's got those Teresa Palmer raccoon eyes, too, so I wasn't crazy about her either. So that was my main issue with this movie. I'm not a fan of either of them. So yeah, that was a kind of an easy watch, an uneasy watch because of the two of them. I did love seeing Vanessa Redgrave was great, and Gemma Redgrave was fantastic, and I know her from Doctor Who, and Prunella Scales is I know her from Fawlty Towers as Sybil Fawlty. And so so there's a lot of good there's a lot of good actors. Of course, Anthony Hopkins is a treasure and all that. So it's kind of a teeter-totter, In the end, I think the pros outweigh the cons, but still, those cons are glaringly apparent because it kind of does revolve. This movie kind of does revolve around Emma Thompson. So even though Anthony Hopkins is the more experienced actor, you know. But there you go. So anyway, so Howard's End, a great story. Well, not a great story, but an interesting story. Not a bad one. With some kind of iffy actresses, some pretty blah actresses. I will give it a B. I'll give it a B though. I think, again, in the end, the pros kind of do outweigh the cons by just a smidgen, but barely, though. So, Howard's End, B. Supplements. Disc 1 has a trailer. Disc 2 has everything else. There's a memoriam of for Ismail Merchant, who had passed away by the time this DVD came out. There's also a documentary called Building Howard's End, which has interviews with James Ivory, Ismail Merchant, Helena Bonham Carter, and others. There's a documentary about the design of Howard's End, about the costume and production designs. There's also a documentary called The Wandering Company about Merchant Ivory Productions. And there's also a behind-the-scenes featurette from 1992 about the making of it. And that's basically it. So, Howard's End, B. Not great, but, you know, check it out if you want. If you're into historical dramas, here you go. Not terrible. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for me for a bit. Coming up next, we got the Eclipser coming in for, I feel so bad for him. He's going to make me do this. I know he is, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to watch another Makavajev movie. I'm not going to do it. No. It's not going to happen. I've already seen Sweet Movie, and that's the last. Please tell me that's the last Makavajev movie I have to see. Wait, how the fuck do you spell this guy's name? Yes, okay. WR and Sweet Movie are the only movies in the Criterion Collection, and then just these Eclipsers. So I'm not looking. I don't envy him one bit. Man is not a bird. Love affair, or the case of the missing switchboard operator. Innocence unprotected. Good luck, man. But anyway, there's that coming up next for the channel. And then for me, I'll be back in a couple days, probably this Thursday, for Monsoon Wedding. And then probably Friday I'll get to Wings of Desire. And then Saturday, I'm hoping Saturday we'll do, Saturday I'll probably get to a Z. And then Sunday I might do, I have the next couple on hold. I have A Christmas Tale coming, Gomorrah, and Downhill Racer. They're coming soon. And Downhill Racer or Downhill Racer. I couldn't remember if it was Downhill Racer or Downhill Rider. And then after that, I got to put a hold on the Golden Age of Television, which I've been looking forward to for forever. I haven't done it yet, but I will do it probably later this week. And then Shay, and then the Rossellini trilogy, and of course before that we've got one more Eclipser set, the Chantal Ackerman set. Again, I don't envy him. And then we're done. We might be able to get this done by the end of June, maybe. We'll see. Because this also involves me, basically, getting all the DVD, because it also has to, I have to get all the DVDs for the showdown at the end, revealing my top 28 and the worst 14. Well, the worst 14 I don't show those. I just put the picture up. So anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. Don't be an ugly crier, and don't lie to your wife about your dead wife's will. I don't know. So anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and the Eclipser will see you all tomorrow or Tuesday for the beginning of the Dusan Makavajev Free Radical Eclipse set, and I will see you all on probably Thursday for Monsoon Wedding. And until then, goodbye, Clarice or Margaret or whoever. Anyway, bye.